All commentary and opinions provided by the Jock Support Podcast are solely our own and do not express the views or opinions of our respective employers. No listener of the Jock Support Podcast should act or refrain from acting on the basis of information on this podcast without first seeking a medical professional. All liability with respect to actions taken or not taken based on the contents of the Jock Support Podcast are hereby expressly disclaimed. You ever watch a sporting event and wonder who's the meathead, headbutting dudes in helmets?
Or the guy spraying water through a player's face mask.
Welcome to the Jock Support Podcast. I'm your co-host, Chris Virtue, alongside Collin Francis.
We'll provide our experiences and insights on what really is required amongst the support systems of elite-level teams and athletes.
We're one strength coach
and one athletic trainer,
peeling back the curtain on what really goes on underneath those bleachers. Are you ready, bro?
I'm ready, man.
Yeah, buddy.
Let's get it.
Yeah, make it bounce, make it bump. Always give the party people what they want. The speakers be banging highs, mids, and lows. Make you want to start getting busy on the floor. All the fly girls screaming out.
Excuse me, this is a 1996 Coca-Cola Collector's Cup from the Atlanta. Yep, thank you.
Atlanta was a good year for the Olympics. That was fun. I remember my family, we vacationed in Brown County every year. And we were down there for the Olympics. That was Michael Johnson with his gold spikes. And have you seen the movie? Joel, the Richard Joel movie? Oh, it's a good movie.
So I was at the Olympics. We went and
did you?
Yeah, we saw like handball, equestrian. I mean, my parents exposed us to a lot. Like, it was awesome.
I would love to go to the Olympics.
The Olympics?
It's crazy, the money in athletics, and it's mainly like the TV deals now. Like Atlanta, I think, was $900 million to put on back then, which is probably, 1.8 billion now. And then the next one was, I think, Greece. No, Sydney, Greece, one of those. And then it went up to like 1.3 billion. And then all of a sudden it jumped to like 5 billion. And now it's like 15 billion to put on an Olympics. And it ends up like, have you seen the pictures of like Beijing and all these places, and all those stadiums are in ruins?
Chris, this needs to be our TV show. Okay. So whatever network is listening, Chris and Collin, we will fly drones and we'll fly into these abandoned places. We'll talk about the greatness that happened there, the great athletic feats that happened in these stadiums. And now the amount of monster ivy growing throughout everywhere. But if I see a snake, I'm out.
Sound like my wife.
No, I'm saying, I'm just putting up front. Like, honesty is the best policy. If I see a snake, I'm out.
Yeah, it's sad when you look at a lot of these. Some of them too are not in the. They usually build these Olympic parks now. It's like an attempt to revitalize. So it's a area in which they want to revitalize, and then now a lot of those they don't upkeep them. They don't have use for them, so they just are abandoned and they're falling apart.
Well, that was an interesting part about the Atlanta Olympics, right? Because their swimming pools now Georgia Tech's swimming pool. The baseball stadium was being used, correct? And then they used a lot of
it. Was Turner Field. The Atlanta has a new one. What do you think about that too? Where's Baltimore's stadium in relation to Baltimore?
All right. Well, first of all, shout out to the Baltimore Elite Giants.
Nice.
This is one of the city's Negro League teams.
Nice.
So look it up. People think it's the Elite Giants, but it's actually the Elite Laundry Company that sponsored it. So the Baltimore Elite Giants.
You ever watch that movie that was based on the Negro Leagues back in the day? And it was like kind of like who was going to be the first African-American in baseball. And there was Josh Gibson, Satchel Paige, and then there was Jackie Robinson. And I remember this movie came out in the 90s, so it was one of those where I think Blair Underwood played Jackie Robinson.
Yep.
Delroy Lindo played. Have you seen that, Satchel Paige?
I have not. Me too.
That's a great movie if you get a chance to see it. But it was one of those where Satchel thought it would be him because he was the most famous at that point. But he was in No, I don't think anybody knew his age, but he was like in his early 40s at that point. And then there was Josh Gibson, and he was a big home run hitter, so he was like the Babe Ruth of the Negro Leagues. But I think he had some, I can't remember what his issues were. And then there was Jackie Robinson, and he was seen as more clean cut, and that's who, that was like the story behind that and how they were vying for it.
There's a great picture, and I can't remember his name, but he was Satchel Paige's athletic trainer, and it's this older black fellow, and he had this muscle rub that Satchel Paige required to have before, and it was said to have like snake venom.
Yeah, they had it in the movie. I remember that
famous picture of him rubbing his shoulder. That if I ever get to become a head athletic trainer, I'd love to blow it up and put it on there. I'll have to find the picture so we can post it. But one of the things that I do in the community, I don't know if you probably didn't even know this, but I'm on the board of the Hubert V. Simmons Museum of Negro League Baseball in Maryland. Wow. I got put on that board a year ago, and it's been great to work with them. It's been tough through the pandemic because there is a living and breathing museum. So shout out to the Hubert V. Simmons, Museum of Negro League Baseball. We'll put a link there, maybe with the clip, so people can check it out more. But it's a fascinating time in history when we used to separate like that. I mean, it's crazy.
Not only sports history, but just American history at that point. The Soul of the Game is what that movie is called. You need to check that out. It's a good movie.
Do you
1996. That's what it was.
Do you have any famous, or not famous, but like little strength coaches like that? Like a picture of, who's a picture of? It's like, oh wow, you actually caught it.
So yeah, I mean, I'm surprised they even had actual athletic trainers that far back. Like, what is the lineage of the athletic training profession?
Oh, you're hitting my soul right now.
Let it rip. Because then I'll touch on the strength side.
This is how I understand the history of athletic training to be. I don't claim to be an expert in this, but if anybody has the correct answer that I'm wrong about, please write in and we can correct it. But my understanding is that Galen, Galen, was the first athletic trainer, and he was the athletic trainer to the Gladiators. So he would wrap their limbs in compression types. So they'd wrap leaves and things around the limbs, and you can see it. You see it in some of the movie adaptations. They look like high knee pads, right? They look like elbow pads. But if you look in the history books, they're wrapped by Galen. Galen would wrap the athletes. He was also known as, I believe, like one of the first physicians. A physician would have to correct me. But he would use topicals on the gladiators. He would take care of their wounds. He would, take legs off and things. So he was the first person to do that. And
they're gonna resurface the flooring of the Coliseum. By the way, I read that today.
Resurface it. So
I guess they're going to put an actual floor in. I didn't read the article. I just saw the headline.
Isn't that kind of ruined? Like, it's supposed to look like that. It's old.
I know. Ruin the ruins. Yeah, I don't know what's going to be. Wait, sorry.
We used to have naval battles in there. That's insane.
Yeah. Have you ever been to it?
No. I want to go.
I haven't either.
Well, yes, Galen is the first athletic trainer, and then it slowly evolved. They used to put the feet that hurt in puddles with eels. Right? And what does that do? It would shock the feet, and the pain would go away.
Is this how, like, the maturation of when you get stung by a jellyfish, you get your friend to pee on you, like your foot?
Not so much. I would say it's a maturation of using electric current to treat pain. But I'm with you. So these are things that, have been around for a while. The Chinese, the ancient Chinese culture was using hot and cold baths to solve ailments way before we knew that temperature did something to circulation. So we have evolved this medical practice of athletic training to what it is now, involving many things. Also, back in the day, they would prioritize health over they would the equipment. So a lot of the athletic trainers were also the equipment managers. All right. I believe in hockey. My understanding of the NHL is that it's still the same. I'm sure they're split professions now, but when I was in school, they were at least still the same for a little bit. And we have evolved into having a knowledge of equipment, a knowledge of medicine that is bar none. So that's what's kind of caused it. From the gladiators to now, we have thousands of years of practical sports performance experience.
What league do you believe in the world goes overboard? Because you mentioned the NHL, and it's a little bit more old school. They have a strength coach. So they have a high performance model behind them. But then I think of when you see the Amazon documentaries, the All or Nothing documentaries, and they have a Premier League team, and it just seems like it's $1 billion investment to like the team that's behind the team.
I honestly don't know enough about any of the other work settings. I've been so entrenched in my setting. When I was in college, I was in the college football realm. I was all in college football athletic training. Now that I'm in the NFL, I'm kind of focused on this main job. So I don't really know enough about the other leagues. I have talked to colleagues and understand how it is different some places, but it sounds cliche. But I honestly think that the NFL invests insane amounts of money in the realm of player health and safety. I have no reason to think that the other leagues wouldn't be different. These professional leagues, here's an interview tip for everyone out there. The most important part of the organization is the player. The most important part of the athletic department is the athlete, right? Nothing exists without them. We are all here from the AD down, from the president down, to help the athlete. And I think we have to always keep that in mind.
Good advice.
That's it's a question that I've been asked, and it's a question that, I ask others, and I think it's important because we keep that in mind. That's the way to check the ego at the door, right? That's the way to kind of get over it. I don't believe in checking the ego at the door. I think it's impossible, but that's the way to kind of move ourselves. We're all focused on the same thing.
Yeah.
I forgot what your question was.
I do too.
I think it was about the history of athletic training. What league you asked me about what league invests the most? Yeah. I think, there's no reason for me to say the NFL doesn't, because I'm always floored with the resources that we have. Wow, we get that? Yes. Wow. Oh, they get to do that? Wow. Oh, wow. They do a phenomenal job.
How would you compare the resources, not only like what you have, NFL versus like high major college, but also where their focus is in their spending, facilities, like stuff they're buying, because it's different.
Yeah. It is leaps and bounds more resourceful in working in the National Football League.
You don't have to, you don't really have to recruit, like probably a little bit in free agency, but you don't have to recruit.
No, there is a little bit of aspect of recruiting, but, player wellness is a priority. Player wellness, is not to be tampered with. We have a professional organization, the Professional Football Athletic Trainer Society, and it is all the athletic trainers from across the league. And it's not a union or anything. It's a professional organization. We have a lot of education opportunities and a lot of internship opportunities and scholarship opportunities. And we have a PFAS Foundation that does a lot of great work. So the league does not spare any expense on it. College, a lot of times you're bound by insurance, and that's a different aspect. You have a primary insurance, a secondary insurance. You have a lot of doctors that fall in and don't. You have behind the scenes doctor's office negotiating with insurance companies. So college is a lot of other stuff involved. Plus you're dealing with class schedules and the fact that they have to go to school. and the fact that they're 19. There's a lot that goes into being a college athletic trainer. And my always question, and I'm a little bit more outspoken, was the second a school says that player wellness is the top priority, and you know exactly what I'm going to say. The second you tell me that the wellness is a top priority, every newspaper should print the salaries of all the strength coaches and all the athletic trainers. The whole staff.
Most of them do. Most of it's all public. You can access it.
All of it's public and can be accessed. But I've never seen an article that says, hey, Joe Schmo University says player wellness is a top priority. But if you look at the budgets and the salaries, it doesn't really equal that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they post the football strength coach salaries. USA Today does that once a year.
Yep.
And you get to look at that, click that link, and then cry a little bit as an Olympic strength coach.
When you told me that, Chris, I did not know. I knew that the football situation was the way it was, but I also did not know about the Olympic sport side, so that was good for me to see.
Yeah, it's an interesting boat we're in now because everything changed. You can kind of see the linchpin in time of where stuff started to change, and it was when the NCAA came out with the 5-strength coach rule, because there were a lot of big high major programs that were just hiding a lot of coaches in strength programs. So like a former player was a coach and all this stuff that they can work with the athletes in the summertime. So you'd have staffs with 11 strength coaches, and they're all working with football. So they came out with the limit 5 strength coaches that can work with football.
Yeah.
Well, then every football program wanted 5 strength coaches. And then that started just driving budgets and money towards that. And that's about the same time that the Big Ten Network was starting, the SEC Network was starting, the Longhorn Network, the restructuring of the Big Ten and the ACC and all this. It all happened in that like 2009 to 2012, 13 area. And then, all these TV deals skyrocketed to where it's like, well, we get 5, so we're going to pay those 5 really well. And we're just going to beef up these staffs and beef up the budgets, and we can because we keep getting this TV money. And then it turns so like before, when I started, you started as a volunteer intern, and then you would move on and you tried to work your way into a paid position, whether it's a graduate assistantship or a part-time strength coach or paid intern. And that usually also meant that you got to work with football, because when we were back then, we were in 2 different rooms. It was assembly hall weight room down in the basement, and then the football team lifted out of Memorial Stadium. So you cut your chops under Olympic, and then once you were there long enough and deemed good enough, then you were brought over to football to like try out and train them. And back then it was one football strength coach who was the strength coach for all the sports, or the director. And then every strength coach that we had helped with football. So like if you didn't have women's basketball at that time, you should be over in the football weight room helping with football. And then they came out with that rule, and it just separated everything. And then it left Olympic to where you have a lot of sports that are not revenue sports. So, I mean, it makes sense business-wise. Where are you going to put your money? In the sports that make you money. So football, basketball, salaries skyrocketed. Basketball more recently. And then football, obviously, for about the past 10, 11, 12 years. But Olympic side, where's the rate of return on the investment? So a lot of the salaries are fairly consistent with what they were about 10 years ago. Some of the directors and some of the people up top will make more now, just because it's typically the football guy or the basketball guy doesn't want to deal with everybody else. So they don't want to have to deal with the swim coach when they have a problem. So the head strength coach is going to be an Olympic strength coach that deals with 22 sports. And then the football strength coach deals with football, and the basketball guy deals with basketball.
Do you think there's any merit in having a director of strength and conditioning that doesn't have any sports?
I mean, I don't know what else. I don't know what you'd do with your time. I could see, limiting yourself to 1 or 2, having one of the more high profile sports. But I mean, strength coaches they're used to working, they're used to doing stuff. And
what about like Would you ever want to be a member of the medical staff?
No. Well, describe what you mean by that. Like, what would that entail?
Question one, would you ever want strength and conditioning to be considered part of sports medicine?
So here's the thing. That's a catch-22 because
I'll clarify. So I want like logistically at a university, you would be co-workers with the athletic trainers in the same department, sports medicine, under a director of sports medicine. You would not be a member of the coaching staff on the football side, and you would not be a member of your own staff on the Olympic side. Like you would have your own thing, but you would be under sports medicine. You'd be a member of the medical staff.
that won't happen in football or basketball because at the end of the day, the head coach wants their guy. So they're not going to let someone else tell them, you can't bring this guy in.
Give everybody contracts and the coach can have their guy.
And that's what they do. I mean, the football strength coaches are on contract and the basketball strength coaches are on contract.
But the trainers are on contract.
No, don't go down that route.
Why not?
I wouldn't because I think when the person making the decisions on if an athlete is good to go or not should not feel that their job is held in limbo by the decisions they make and pleasing the boss. That needs to be separate. And that's where you have a lot of these problems that rise in the summertime. And it doesn't happen all at once. It's just a part of the culture and it rises over time to where, if you're a football strength coach and you're training somebody outside in 110 degree heat, and it's the first week back in the summer, I got to get these guys tough, so I can't be soft on them because the coach is going to sit. Like that shouldn't be. Those kind of things shouldn't enter your mind, and especially not from the athletic training standpoint. Because, and my trainers that I've worked with, hopefully they all know this, and they should know this, is like their decision to pull somebody it's not up to me to pull somebody. Like we'll have discussions before a workout and I'll be like, this is going to be a hard workout. So-and-so is going to want to quit. And my thing is, it's like if someone, it's kind of like the Navy SEALs. As soon as they have in their mind that they want to ring the bell, it doesn't matter. At some point, I just know they're going to ring the bell. I know they're going to quit. So it's the same thing going in. Like, I know it's going to be a tough workout. I know where we're going to struggle. I know who's going to struggle when. You have those conversations with your athletic trainer beforehand and be like, whatever decision that you make, I am 100%. It's not my decision whether they're in or they're not. What I don't want is them being half in, half out. Like, oh, I'm really struggling, so I'm going to sit out for 2 minutes and then I can come back in. I was like, that's what I don't want. So it's like, if you feel they're not physically able to go, that's your call. But if you make that call, they're not coming back in. Like it's a go, no go. But if it's one of those things where you're like, no, you can go, like that's where it's just, we were on the same page where it's to the athlete. No, you can go. And if you don't, you're done. So to get back to that question,
do you think that's a normal conversation that's had?
It needs to be. I think you need to get to the point where you're having that conversation. That should be before every workout. Now, I mean, you have ebbs and flows, and when you get in a flow of stuff and you develop a relationship, and especially early on. And then for me, that conversation happens a lot at the beginning of new cycles, beginning of camp, beginning of off-season training in January, So like summertime, there'll be conversations before every workout. Hey, this is what I'm doing today. Amanda, this is, it's just a lift today. I don't expect too many problems. Or no, we're going to be outside. It might be a little bit hot. I'm going to be doing this. This is how I'm doing the rest and stuff. This is when we'll probably start to see some of this stuff, some of these problems come up or some of the issues come up. And then it's like, let's just all be aware. And it's just being on the same page. Because again, it's athlete first. I want to train the kid as hard as I possibly can, but I would never want to put him to the point where, because of my ego, like you say, I need to have them so tough that I'm burying them into the ground. And then all of a sudden they have to miss a week or two because of heat exhaustion or stroke. Because we made those mistakes before, and you learn from them and you try to be better from them as you go along.
How do you explain your training to your medical staff?
So I try to explain it a little bit deeper than I would to the athletes, but even to myself, I like to keep things as simple as possible when I'm explaining stuff. Because if it's not something you can get across to an athlete, you're just making it way too complicated. And then you have someone as educated as an athletic trainer that understands what's going on, that you don't have to explain so much of the little nuances. You're just like, this is what I'm planning. This is what I'm thinking. So even now I have the summer planned. My conversation with the trainer started at probably like 2-3 weeks left in the season. We were sitting on a bus to Illinois, and her and I went over each athlete. We evaluated each one, who's going to struggle when, what they need in April and May when they're away from us, who needs to go see PT, who needs to follow a rehab schedule more than a lifting schedule or a conditioning schedule when they're away, and then what we expect them to be at when they come back, and then what my plan for the schedule is. Because then they'll base, cold baths, tubs, treatments and stuff around that, and open gyms and such. But it's more of a logistical thing than it is because by the time you've done it with each other for a year, 2 or 3, you know pretty much what's going on.
Do you talk about like, hey, I believe in cluster sets, or I follow the tier system and this is what it is? Do you dive deep into that stuff, or?
We'll talk about my general philosophy of how I want to train them. Like towards the end of the season when we were meeting on the bus, it was this is kind of what I'd like to do with them. It's an interesting offseason too, because we have a young tech. Just for me personally, it's a young team. Not one person has been through 8 straight weeks of me yet on the team. Like we have one senior, she was a transfer. She got like 5 weeks. 4 to 5 weeks of a January, February area of off season, and then COVID hit. We have a junior that, she had 5 or 6 weeks after her freshman year, and then she went and played overseas with the Big Ten Tour and stuff. So she was maybe 5-6 weeks. And then now our juniors, one of them showed up August 1st, her freshman year, as camp started, and the other 2 showed up in July. So they got 3 weeks. And then nobody got really anything this year besides the 4 weeks we had back in July. So it's 8 straight weeks. It's actually my first true off season in 3 months. So it's exciting, but it's one of those where it's more describing the week and how I'll progress it. So, how I'm going to progress conditioning, what I'm doing each day. And then I'll go into like, this is going to be a max effort day or a heavier day. This is going to be more of a dynamic day or a fast day. There's going to be days where this will be more of like a GPP on this day with the lift, and then Tuesday is going to be more agility and conditioning and sports specific stuff. Wednesday will be like my MF day, and as far as in conditioning, like that, we have like those kind of conversations. Not, well, Louis Simmons said this.
If Louis Simmons said it, I believe it.
Yeah, he's got some great stuff. But to go back to the sports medicine question, we're kind of that under that umbrella now, or it's going that way to where you have one associate AD typically overseeing sport med, sport psych, and then strength conditioning or nutrition.
Who should that person be?
It should be, in my mind, you just don't have enough people that have moved up into those positions. It's starting to happen at some mid-level schools. It should be a strength coach or an athletic trainer, one of the two. Someone that's worked actually like in the trenches, worked with athletes. Like you've seen athletes puking in a trash can or crying on your training table or like those kind of things, because then what the people the people on the front lines are what's always going to be driving the boat. And then you have your athletes, and who touches them every day? An athletic trainer or a strength coach, So I would want someone that's experienced, like your Tim Garl types or your Joe Lucan types here at IU, to where you have someone that's been in those shoes and has traveled and done all those things and knows like what a soccer athlete is going through and what a soccer strength coach, like a lot of us are traveling now. So to know what it's like for me in the 3rd month of the season, dealing with me as opposed to an administrator that hasn't talked to me in 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Those are different conversations.
Do you think that we have essentially pushed ourselves out of the era of like a Barry Alvarez, right? He's retiring, a football coach, an amazing football coach that rose to be an administrator. You know, do you think that we are gone from the days where people who practically worked in the athletic department are getting those roles and they're now going to lawyers or compliance officers or, you know, people who didn't actually work on the operations in the trenches, would you say?
Bang to the bang to the bang. Bust it. It's like bang boogie, boogie to the bang.